Guardian, we've picked up a high-gain transmission. Origin point is somewhere along the coast, near the Cosmodrome.
What is going on, Guardians across the universe? This is a not normal episode of Cosmodrome Radio. This is an emergency broadcast as advertised on Twitter yesterday. We felt the need to have this episode after some much needed conversation and some volunteering that occurred, and it just this definitely not a normal episode, because as we know from this week's controversies and whatnot, the game Destiny is not in the same way we once knew. We have seen a drastic shift in a way we didn't and no one really saw coming, and or at least anyone that was unbeknownst to it saw coming, rather. And I speak for the entire cast. I know Diva and Dirty T aren't here, but me and Cajun felt that keeping this small and concise with our special guest was more of the goal, and keeping it on point and just getting the ball rolling was the goal. As always, make sure you check the podcast out on your audio platform of choice after the show is over. I will try to I still need to get last week's up, but I will probably get both last week and this up immediately after the show. So make sure that you check that out if you miss anything intermittently during the conversation. I'm not gonna plug anything else. This is very much an emergency broadcast for a reason. My name is Pain of the Paladin. As always, I got to my right on both mobile and desktop today. Cajun is on my right today. So, Cajun Geek, how are you, sir?
To say that I'm all right, like physically, real life stuff, yeah, I'm doing good. But I think I'm with a lot of the community when I say that, it feels like we're not all right. Um, there's so many emotions going on through a lot of us, frustration, anger. It feels like some betrayal. It feels like trust is broken. But for a lot of us, for a lot of people, they're still trying to sift through what exactly happened, what took place, who's responsible, etc. And we still don't have all the details. All we have is some information, and without context, we have to make assumptions, and that's not something we should be doing.
Yeah.
But today we get the rare chance to not only hear directly from someone who was affected by all of this, but give a chance for their voice to be lifted up. And at the same time, hopefully share their experience of why this situation as a whole being laid off, and why more and more people are starting to push for for reform to happen in the video game industry. So
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
So I
Um,
ask that everybody listening to this, please listen with an open mind, and please consider heavily having some empathy, not just for those that got laid off, but also for the devs that are still working there.
yeah, that's a great way to put that. We are very blessed, very thankful for the opportunity to speak to former associated tester Brainiac. How are you doing tonight? As much as you can be. How are you?
Yeah, I've let the recent events stew for a little bit, obviously. I've had way more time to think about it than I probably should have, but thanks to friends and family for getting me through the probably the roughest part of it. But yeah, glad to be here today. I'll try to speak to my experiences with Bungie, but it is still a little bit biased, even though I did get laid off. It was a dream. It was a dream come true for me. So yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, w- I guess the way I wanted to start this is this game, like you said, was a dream come true for you. Like this world, this expansive universe that we all love, is something you care about. What made you want to pursue gaming in terms of like as a career?
Well, I wouldn't say. Let's clarify this a little bit. My journey
Sure.
kind of happened on accident,
Okay.
just because I applied for Bungie pretty much as soon as I got out of college, just because I was like, oh, why not, right? You
Right.
never know what's gonna happen. My parents always like they're not exactly fond of me playing video games all the time, and I want to prove them wrong. That sort of thing. But yeah, I got an email like February of 2022, and I got accepted for interviews. And uh, at the time, when they interviewed me, they asked me if I could start like immediately, and then I told them I gotta finish school first. So they delayed my employment until March. So
Huh?
that's like the rough timeline. So by then, the way I timed it out is kind of funny. I wanted to be able to do the day one raid for Vowed Disciple. So I timed it so that I would start working the Monday after,
That's
I believe.
perfect.
I can check my calendars, but it was like, here, let's go to March.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I started March 21st of 2023 at Bungie, and that was the Monday, I believe like 2 or 3 weeks after Witch Queen came out and the raid was released. I didn't get the emblem, but it was fun nonetheless.
Right.
You know you're a raider and a gamer when you start your job after
After
after a massive raid event. That is freaking stellar right there. GG.
Yeah, it was like I'll first and foremost, I'll always be a gamer of Destiny, no matter what happens, no matter what happens to me in the future. I've
Mhm.
always just wanted to keep playing Destiny. I played since Destiny 2 came out. It was like my go-to game for the longest time. And yeah, I like to say that I majored in Destiny 2 and my minor was my computer engineering degree. But that's just the little things.
So outside of Destiny 2, were there any other franchises within from Bungie that you also enjoyed? Or was like Destiny your first like taste?
I believe I played the original Halo before, but more of like a multiplayer aspect. Like they had like LAN
Fair
parties at
enough.
my friend's house and stuff like that. I was never good at it, but I once Destiny 2 came out, I kind of just tried to pick it up and stick with it as much as possible. I stuck through uh the double primary meta of the vanilla D2. I played laser tag weekend when Prometheus Lens was
Yeah.
on Xur, so I have that emblem, and I played the Lord of Wolves weekend as well, so I have that emblem as well. So I've been playing for the longest time. I didn't play as much during Curse of Osiris. I think I only played during Prometheus Lens laser tag, and so I just played PvP for a little bit. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's like Destiny 2 has been my world for the past 5 years since it came out.
That is amazing.
Oh, indeed.
And it's like when you first began, and like in terms of just like for the audience, like because we haven't like really gotten to that. What was your main like day to day like? Like, I don't want to say occupation. That sounds like very like static. But like what were your responsibilities at Bungie? That way people sort of like get like an idea of what your scope is in terms of the conversation.
So my job at Bungie, I feel I can say this is not exactly NDA, but it's like I was a tester for Destiny 2. I was on a very specific team, so I wasn't testing everything, but it was like we have a specific section that we focus on. Not all we like try to filter through like the live bugs that come in, and we try to filter like, okay, this isn't for our team. But then if it is kind of related, we would ask like, is this on us or is this they would tag a different team, etc., etc. Just because Destiny 2 is an incredibly massive game. Like whether bugs are bound to happen, as they do with such things, but just because I learned there's a timing cadence to everything, so it's like there's just like we do have a fix for this, but it's not within the release timings for certain patches, pretty much. So we just like we try to push more of the important things up the pipeline, pretty much. Like remember crafting weekend?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that I got to work on that. That was like my first overtime that I was
Oof.
allowed to work on.
Wow.
With that, it was like it was a kind of like a factory, I guess. It's just certain batches had with the fixes that we wanted, and then it was just released into major cadences. Just how the game comes out, and like I know it's like a meme at this point, but like every time they turn off the servers for maintenance, and everyone complains because it's the weekly Tuesday shutout. But it's like it's how it's sustained for so long.
Fair enough. Fair
So,
enough.
so when it came to QA testing, I think it would be if you could share your experience of like what your experience was like working at Bungie in the QA department, as well as testing those select systems. So for you and your team, you tested, this certain portion of Destiny 2.
Mhm.
So when you were given something to test or to, put through QA, what was like your overall scope of work? If you can walk us through that.
I'll try to be as vague as possible.
Fair
You know
No,
enough.
understandable.
we have like seasonal releases.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Used to, I guess now, but like season of this, season of that. That's like our biggest like. This is like okay, this is what we're working on right now. Sometimes we swap between different ones, but it was like we have stuff that we want to put out into the real game on this release versus the next release versus the next release or the next release. And then just the timing of it, some things just get pushed around. I can't say to why specific timings, but it was like, okay, this is what we're working on for we would do like uh we work on things pretty much like a week to week basis. We would plan things a little bit in advance, right? It was like, oh, we know we have to do this certain thing on this certain day before this certain time. But usually the team that I worked on, we had like uh I think it was a total of like 6 or 7 people. Some teams were larger, some teams were uh smaller, but I believe it was like that was like kind of the average. But I was fortunate enough that my someone on our team always advocated for us to not work overtime. And whenever
Well,
we did, it was always voluntary. I
well, that's
never
good.
listened, but yeah, no, because like whenever like I'm an active player of Destiny, as far as I'm concerned, I'm still am. But my
Mhm.
my clans would always report to me as like, "Hey, this thing happened." It's like, "Okay, I'll let the people know about it." But most of the time, if you know the YouTube channel Cheese Forever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he does most of our bug reporting work, honestly. It's just whenever w it's true, it's kinda funny because he does step-by-step processes on how to recreate the bug, and that tells designers so much about
Wow.
how to fix it. So it's not a matter of, like, is what he because is it, like, copying work? Kind of, yes, but also it simplifies the process a lot more.
That's valid, yeah.
So, okay, so for me, I've always looked at like Cheese Forever as this like to me, it feels like a bad part of the Destiny 2 community that's always like looking for exploits. So, but would you say it's more of a necessary evil?
I wouldn't say
Um,
necessary evil, right? Because the way just because of the scale of Destiny, you'll always have people that are trying to find an extra edge, regardless of its PvP, PvE, etc., etc. Cheese Forever just so happens to line up perfectly with test mentality. Is that uh, if it's a bug and it's technically an exploit, he's letting people know about it. It just
Right.
so happens that testers are also people looking at that. I just found that I always talk to my clanmates about that on in my personal time. I was like, if you ever, so I, yeah, it's just it's a happy coincidence. Uh, I know other other people might not view it that way, but the way I view it is like as a job, it made finding and fixing things a lot easier.
I can imagine.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like the day-to-day process when going through things, you see like you actually using the community as a resource. What was sort of I don't, like in terms of like the like how I want to phrase this in the best way possible. Like going through the past, what say it's been about like a year since Vow came out, well, about a year and a half, correct? So like going through each patch and making sure, like there's always that phrase when it comes to Destiny players, was this tested? And I want to like sort of like get in your head of that experience as well, like seeing that in the open when it comes to the player base. Like when it comes to like wondering how errors occur with certain patches, how are those addressed or how are those missed when it comes to the conversation?
Like I said, I can't really speak to how other teams did things, but most of those were probably just gameplay stuff, right? It was like
Right.
with a player base as large as and as active as Destiny 2 is, it's literally impossible to test every single possible outcome of all the AI placements, all the combat mechanics, etc., etc. We can do as much as we can to like get to like a certain point, but
Mhm.
as long as like the average player doesn't run into like a game breaking bug, it's part of like how like the quality like the bar like you there's a question earlier about like, oh, is there a certain bar that we can't do like is there a certain bar that we have to meet? This is more of like, is this enough? If we put in the work to fix this, how much of that are we going to see in our returns? So it's like a cost return kind of thing. And
Right.
sometimes things are just not worth fixing because it takes either too long to fix it or it's such a small change that no one's going to notice that it was fixed anyway.
Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. Because I know there's like
So
there have been certain bugs that linger for a while in the game or different issues. That is an interesting way to like know about it and like that stuff sort of publicized. That way people understand the scope of the landscape of the game when it comes to future patches.
right.
And also, if
And
like if it's a fun bug, people are going to leave it in for as long as possible. But yeah.
Fair enough.
so yeah, so a lot of what you just explained is very similar to for those not in know, while I'm not in the video game industry, I am in the quality industry and quality assurance, and a lot of what you just said is very applicable to what I do in my aspect of job. So basically, bottom line, to sum it up for a lot of people, is everything's on a priority system and
Right.
everything is graded in what is a priority, what can be allowed, what is acceptable, or if fixing this one item is going to cost more than the return on investment.
Mhm.
So, do I necessarily agree with that type of hierarchy? No, because I think all things should be fixed. But at the same time, from a cost perspective, man force or workforce resource usage, you have to. do the best you can to keep the game as stable as you can, and so that means you've got to come at it from a priority standpoint.
It's also the case of it's a game, right? It's not a physical product that people can touch with their hands. Whereas like QA probably for an active like an actual product differs very different from like something like in game where we can just like I know this is a joke and like a meme in the community, but it's like sometimes we just can't just flip a switch to not give you stuff.
Right.
But it's just like a if it's a problem, we can just flip on and off switch, and we can see a return on that fix a lot sooner than if you'd like say have a major product recall. That's a
Right.
very
Right.
different thing.
Yeah.
So
Very much so.
that's why games always have day one patches because like some versions just we had to just like put as many fixes as we can according to our timeline, and then afterwards like okay now we can patch it. Now we can add that fix, and that will take care of most of the bugs.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So for this next question, in your experience at working at Bungie, was there ever a bug that y'all discovered or came across that would have like severely impacted the game that um
Like
y'all were
wasn't
able to work?
publicly known.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, not that I know of. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind, right, was the big crafting weekend, and that was a hell of a time. Uh, I never bothered because it was too many steps for me to care,
Right.
to participate, but it was, uh, that was like the most breaking thing we had, and that was like an all hands on deck sort of thing.
Really. Wow.
We had people come in on weekends to work on it because it happened over a weekend. Like
Yeah.
people
Right.
found out on Friday night, and then we were like, uh, I wasn't in the office at the time, but I know some people that did work on it and were are now laid off. I don't think that's a surprise.
Right.
But it was like that was our biggest, at least for me when I was started working there. That was the biggest thing that came to mind. Um, trying to think what else.
I know when it came to the crafting, there was a moral divide in the community. What was the discussion like, if you can, even from a vague standpoint? What was the conversation like amongst the working environment of that situation, even from a moral standpoint for you guys?
It was first and foremost, Destiny 2 is a game. I like to remind people that people think it's their job. It
Right.
isn't. It's no longer mine, but you know, it's a game. And if it's technically fun and beneficial, whoever was in charge just decided we'll leave it in for a little bit. We'll see how we didn't real I guess at the time when we found out about it, we didn't know the extent of what people could do. That and then once we did realize like, oh no, sort of moment, and then we were
Right.
like, okay, we should get they had a little bit of fun. We'll give it a day, and then we have to do something about this. I don't know the exact way they fixed it. I just know that they brought me in for overtime to check, okay, did we fix this properly or whatnot? And that was
Mhm.
that. I don't, like I said, I'm a tester, I'm not a designer, so I don't know the exact reason how they did it, but all I know is that it wasn't something that was in the game before. It was something that was in the most recent patch, and then something happened.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
I don't like to use this term, but it was definitely like code spaghetti.
And like that actually like does bring up a valid point, because I like one thing that I wanted to touch on is there is the sort of sentiment in the community that Destiny is being held up by like spaghetti and prayer, and I don't know how much you could speak to it, because obviously you're not too involved from the coding aspect, but in terms of like daily testing behind the scenes, how does the removal of content plus the age of how Destiny is in the engine affect the testing environment?
Um, I don't know how much I can say, but it is a matter of it's a combination of the two. It is technically an old engine, and stuff. A
Right.
lot of the stuff is still technically in the game. Like all the you have those sunset consumables are still technically taking up space in the game. If we wanted, we could just remove them at any time, but it was just a matter of like, "Oh, the players want to keep them, let them keep them." It's to their I think it's to their detriment, but whatever. What am I gonna do about it? I can't make people
Right.
dismantle things. Dado has a much better say on that. But it's a matter of like first, like people. I think the first and foremost rule of it is like it's a game. If it's not breaking the code, it's not like making people crash. It's probably being deprioritized because that was like the biggest thing.
Right.
Uh, so it's a combination of things, and also Destiny is an kind of an old game. Destiny
Right.
2 in particular is 5 years old, going on 6 next year, and that's
Yeah.
insane to think about. For reference, I believe, like, the only other game that is this old is, like, a MOBA, like Dota 2 or something like that.
Right.
Even, like, Fortnite, they change it fairly often, I don't know. I don't play Fortnite, but I know it's like
It definitely receives like engine upgrades on the regular when it comes to that's why they'll even tell people,
Yeah.
hey, kicking you from the game for a certain amount of time, deal with it. And that's never really happened when it comes to Destiny, I don't think.
Yeah,
it's
and
yeah, it's a
even
unique
for those
case.
yeah, and for those that don't know, even for a game like World of Warcraft, and even for those ancient like me, freaking EverQuest.
Oh dear.
Those games
I
have
heard of
those game
EverQuest, yeah.
those games have received engine upgrades and even engine redos. Okay. So, yeah, but the fact that the engine for Destiny is coming up on 6 years old, and the fact that it
I
hasn't
said the
received
game is coming up on 6 years old. I don't know how old the engine is.
Well,
well,
and like
the
I
engine
remember,
that
yeah.
from my understanding, the engine is definitely different and upgraded from Destiny 1.
And I know there was a vast upgrade that occurred with Beyond Light. I recall there was the whole talk of like they had to reintroduce new things to add like the crazy weather engine they had on Beyond Light for like Europa. I believe they had spoke on. There was a vast upgrade they did there, but
I
I don't
can't
know.
speak to what they changed in Beyond Light, but as far as I know, it's still the vast majority is still the same system. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just a tester, man. Or
Right. I
I'm
must
just
say,
a
there isn't so much like that you can speak on from like the grand scheme of things, but I definitely still felt that your conversation was valuable because it definitely is a situation of your influence on the game still mattered. Like what you did and what your colleagues did when it comes like just the crafting alone, you could speak on when it comes to you helped make a difference in the game for the long term because like as much as I loved having shotgun shells and an auto rifle, that's not what the game was meant to have. So it's very much like you
yeah.
definitely made a difference.
It I like to think of crafting kind of as like a one-off thing that I did, more like because I think we talked about this. They talked about the legendary shard removal.
Yeah, we talked about that like off camera a little bit. Like we talked about like how like legendary shards. I was a little frustrated. Like I talked about on previous episodes of like why would we keep deprecating things, and you had spoke on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll talk about that conversation that we had. Just because there's so many in Destiny, you have only so much consumable space,
Right.
and that already is taken up by I don't know how many different currencies that we have, including raid banners. That's a whole different thing.
Oh.
But all those just kind of pile up. There's a reason why we tried to. You say deprecate. We were trying to say simplify the economy a little bit,
Well,
just
what I
because.
was saying by deprecate was it feels like not like we've gotten rid of planetary materials, and that kind of struck a nerve a little bit because it made like planetary locations not as unique. And then there was the removal of now with legendary shards. And I think even when we had our conversation, you had said it made the economy less stressful when some people have like thousands and some people have like tens. When recently with Lightfall, like the introduction of the seasonal engrams just piling up, it definitely introduced a way for newer players to reach higher levels of legendary shards. I think there needed to be more ways to spend legendary shards, if anything, for players. That way, the large stocks some people had could come down, because you're seeing now like people are pouring their legendary shards into phantasmal fragments and dark fragments, getting ready for when the economy crashes next season. It feels as if there was just not enough ways for players to spend the currency, or even not even teaching players how to find in game, if that makes sense, ways to use that currency or find that currency in profitable ways.
I do want a minor correction. We aren't. The plan was not to remove legendary shards entirely until the final shape.
I appreciate the correction. Yes, like they're just not they won't be like gainable next season, if I'm correct. Is that correct? Like even
Uh,
if you dismantle something, it'll just give you
no, no,
glitter, I believe.
they're still in the game. They're still earnable. It's just
Right.
I believe, I
They're
don't know how,
still earnable. If I
but
understood
they'll
it
be
correctly,
less
there's
valuable, is what I'm
Right.
right.
gonna
You
say.
won't have ways of spending it per se,
Like you can't go
because
to like
they're
Rahul and spend them on a gun anymore. They'll just be like sitting in your inventory as not part of the equation of like glimmer and enhancement cores and stuff like that.
yeah,
I believe that's no. They'll still. You can still be able to still spend them. It's just they'll be. Uh,
not required for a lot of things.
yeah. If like people want to like engage with different systems, it's not as restrictive.
Right.
But they'll still be in the game, I believe.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So
No. I will just like we're not. Nothing's changing until final shape.
But like in terms of the conversation that you and I had, like what were you saying in terms of the reason to get rid of them for the sake of the player base?
Like like majority of players don't have a dragon's hoard of loot in their
Right.
vaults, in their whatever inventories they have. That's probably like around 1%. So I'm part of the 1% of Destiny 2 players. But it was like the majority of players have like less than 1,000 of legendary shards, or I don't know, but it's just like if we ripped out legendary shards from the game, it would not affect as many players as they think. And also, you can't use them anywhere else, as many places anymore. So yeah.
Fair enough.
But moving on to another topic, please. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I know you were about to dive into something.
yep, and I was gonna say, so now we're getting into some questions. I know I present so just so everyone has a bit of context. Um, when we first started having a discussion with Brainiac, we presented all the questions that we were going to talk to them about to make sure that one, there was no NDA violation that was going to occur, and then number two, to also set the
Right.
standard that they are going to be talking from their experience. So they won't be able to get tell us what this individual said or this individual did. This is only from their perspective. So
Mhm.
take that and understand that. So with that being said, so for a lot of the community, we've been hearing that there have been other things going on, and this has been coming out as of this week because the whole layoff. So I think let's set the stage. You came on right after Vow to the Disciple, so in Witch Queen.
Yeah.
So from that point and then up until just after the Lightfall launch, what was the mood and sentiment amongst the Bungie team and the Destiny 2 team in regards to how they felt about where Destiny 2 was as a whole? If you
I
could
want to
share from
say for at least for my personal experience, right? Everyone that I worked with was really happy with what it was going because a lot of them did play the game. They enjoyed like looking at what was coming out of the pipeline and excited for players to play it because it was like, oh, we're bringing this back, we're bringing this back. This is a new weapon. This is a new weapon. This is a new activity. I think players are going to enjoy this because I think the first thing I worked on was like Season of the Haunted.
Mm.
Uh, or sorry, correction. I was worked, if you remember, back a while ago. There was a bug where if you dismantled the blue set from
Yeah,
Witch
the
Queen,
legendary farm.
yeah. So I fixed that.
Oh man, man, I got rich
all
off that,
right, now
man.
we know. No, no.
I hit 18 grand off that thing, man. Oh man,
Yeah, sorry.
I
The
got
team,
rich.
yeah, the team I worked on, we did a lot of whenever there was a farm, there was always an issue with us. We took it personally, but you know.
Oh really?
So that was like that was the first
So
thing
I'm guessing you guys dealt with the Ikora exotic farm too when Lightfall came
that
out.
was a
Oh,
unique thing because we didn't know that was happening.
Oh
They
really?
well, we knew that it was like, oh, we're gonna do this thing for new lights that they can get an exotic really easily. But we
Right.
didn't know the specifics how they set it up. But once we found out afterwards, like, oh, this doesn't they've like people found the bug of you can get an infinite number of that. And then we
Hmm.
were like, ah, that's a problem. So it
I
was like,
won't.
That's
I won't
hilarious.
lie. When that bug came out, it was like I had just got home from work. I didn't have anything planned. I was like, I'm staying up and I'm gonna freaking jump on this farm like I've never had a chance
Oh yeah,
to.
no, especially the season of the Haunted Farm, man. That was money in the bank right there.
yeah, all those is like whenever we had to farm, it was like an issue because, but anyway, yeah, that was so yeah,
So basically, a lot of the team was excited for what was coming out, what y'all were producing, and you generally you all thought that the player reception was going to be good. Is that my understanding?
yeah. At least that was like my first impression, just because like the stuff that were introduced in Lightfall, Strand and stuff, that was like something people anticipated for a while. Uh,
Right.
like that was like as a player, I was like, oh, this looks sick, like and everything. Uh, and all the seasons leading up to that, it was kind of fun too, because Season of the Haunted brought back the old Leviathan.
Mhm.
Season of the Plunder was just uh like fun pirate season. I thought it was a good thing. And then I believe season of what was it? Season of
Seraph.
the Seraph, yeah, brought back all the Rasputin things that everyone loved. So it was like there was things to be excited for everything that we worked on, and I thought people were going to people did love it, but it's just a matter of like there were different receptions to different themes, I guess. But it was like it looked pretty cool what we were working on that people I thought people were going to be excited, and rightfully so. They were excited for the big things, but it was just like the smaller things that I didn't know about per se.
Mhm.
Was like I knew of big things just because I knew where to look, but it was like the big ideas we had for each expansion was like, oh, I think people will like that, and I'm not sure how much. I think people kind of the like hindsight is always 2020. Uh, I can't say how my other people that I worked with viewed it, but uh, yeah, it was an interesting time right after
Okay.
Lightfall released. I can't say what other people were feeling, but I enjoyed what we did, what we got, I guess, because it reminded me a lot of Beyond Light with like how
Mm,
we learned about stasis. I think people were disappointed with how it was introduced rather than uh along with other things, but um yeah, like this is all personal opinion, personal experience.
Right.
right.
Like as a player, I was excited.
Fair enough. And like, but also with that, I know whenever there is a negative sentiment in the community, I've always wondered like what is the perspective of the environment within Bungie. I remember when last year around the time I know you mentioned the small things around the season of the Plunder and Seraph last year with I remember Glad's big video came out of him like raising the question of the seasonal model becoming too repetitive and not as like enticing for people anymore. I don't know if there was conversation about that from the testers of like the seasonal model not being up to the players like liking when it comes to that system.
I could definitely see people's reasons why they were getting it was getting kind of like a bland taste if you taste the same thing over and over again, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It was like we've done this what felt like a bajillion times. It was only like 9, 10 times at that point, and people
Something like
just
that. Yeah, it was,
people getting
it was from chosen forward, so
yeah, it was like
a good chunk of time.
that was like everyone was like just kind of bored of the format. So it was we I don't know. I can't speak to it, but I didn't have any impact on that. That was more of a decision that other people made, and they were like, "Okay, we can see what you're going for. Yeah, we'll try to do what we can to change it." And that was when the idea of like a episode model I think was starting to come out or something.
Okay,
So it was like
interesting.
they knew they wanted to do something different, and then but we already had the rest of the year planned out, so we couldn't really change it. So what we were working on couldn't just be dropped because that would ruin the entire game. But
Right.
I don't know. I don't think I can talk about exactly what they did, but yeah, that was like the scenes of the plunder was the time where they took those community settings like seriously.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
So, in regards to community feedback and relaying that to upper management, I know in the IGN article, it was others have come out and said that upper management kind of ignored a lot of suggestions or feedback. Was this something that you and the QA team also kind of experienced as well?
Uh, I mean, we always pitched ideas to other team members. I think leadership included. We always had that like suggestion box sort of thing.
Hmm.
But what was picked up, I couldn't say on whether if they deliberately ignored it or not. But it was a matter of like what sounds good on paper, what has worked before. And that was like the model. I think that was the model they had on approving or cutting things, I guess would be the better term. But it was like just some things kind of uh fell on deaf ears. I don't want to say what exactly because I don't know if I can say, but it was a matter of
Right.
like their reasoning behind denying certain things. I will never know.
Right.
Fair enough. In terms of like, I know we touched on the plunder seraph era. When it comes to the reception post Lightfall, I don't know if you could speak on when it comes to the negative perception or how the negative perception influenced your day to day. Like, did it have an impact on your day to day when it came to testing? Was there acceleration on new ideas? Was there like any change up to how things occurred post Lightfall, like reception?
Mm, mm,
Because I know that like there was that dramatic shift in terms of new ideas with Season of the Deep, with the deep dives, and now with Sabbath Inspired,
I
there was
so
those different changes.
so I wasn't aware of all like the nitty gritty gameplay stuff that we had planned for that year. I knew of like the major themes. It was like and but I still had my own job to do.
Right.
If that makes sense. I had stuff I had to make sure was done. I had to make sure that my own plate was clean. So I had very little time to observe, digest, and kind of rate, I guess, the other stuff people were working on. Like you can it's easy to say like why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that after the fact? But in the
Right.
middle of it is just like if we kept debating on what to do, we would never get things done. If we kept
Right.
deciding if we wanted to do this or that between A, B, C, or D, Destiny 2 would never have gotten finished because we would still be stuck in design phase. We would never get out of test. We would never get to the point of releasing something to the wider community. There's always an
Okay.
infinite number of what ifs, but after a certain point, you have to realize to be realistic, to be conscious of like to be conceptual of what we want to do, to what players want. It's safer to go with what we've done before and what has worked before.
Okay. I know there was I remember what recently when the GDC conference like video came out around like about a few months ago from last year had came out. There was the conversation of trains and whatnot, and like speaking of what you're saying of like nothing will ever get done. There was that conversation of fast trains and fast delivery versus quality delivery. What like was there ever any conversations of like would like get this out the door versus like quality of a product?
Mm, I mean, kind of yes. There's just some things that we had to just not work on because they told us that we needed to work on what we knew we could get done.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it was like if we still were working on A versus B and deciding if we want to do C, we know we can finish A. We might be able to finish B, but we'll never get to work on C. So I think
Okay.
I don't think that's an exclusive to Bungie thing though. That's just a
Right.
matter of
Yeah.
like practicality, regardless of what profession you're in. It's just like you have to make decisions on what you can accomplish in a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Speaking from experience within the quality field, like I said, I'm within another industry. Um, Basically, it is going to boil down to a priority system when it comes to performing, as I'm going to put it, inspections or reviewing things. Um, and basically, it's for us, it's a bit of a checklist. Is it acceptable? Is it not? And if it's not, we've got to let other departments handle that, and we kind of have to move on to another aspect. You can't pigeonhole yourself onto this one thing. Otherwise, it's going to affect the production of what you're trying to do. So there's always that give and take that happens in the QA area.
Yeah.
Adrian, what do you got for him?
All right. So you once again you came in shortly after Witch Queen. So around this time is when a lot of the community was hearing about the Sony buyout. Um, so when you came on board, um, for not just for your team but also within the Bungie studio itself, what was the general reception to this? And also, did anyone have concerns
Ooh.
at the time to that buyout?
When I started working there, I wasn't even aware of the Sony buyout, even though they announced it like a month before, and I just kind of slipped my mind. So I wasn't applying to Bungie knowing that it was going to be a Sony partnership. If that makes sense. I applied for Bungie. I stayed for Bungie.
Right.
I wasn't like a diehard Sony guy. I was just like, oh, we're working with Sony now. As far as I'm concerned, nothing really changed for me. I can't speak to my other people that I worked with, but it was more of like people who didn't agree with the Sony partnership by the time I started. They already weren't at Bungie. I don't want to like I don't want to paint the picture negatively, but like I didn't get to see any impact on what we were doing because what I started with and what I finished with was what I knew. So I didn't
Right.
see like we didn't see like there was not like a Sony guy that came to the studio or anything. It was just like we have Sony stuff that we knew. There was like uh I don't know, nothing comes to mind, but it was just like it wasn't like Bungie hung up banners saying we are owned by Sony. It's just a part of our job description, if that makes sense.
It
Yeah, that makes
it was
perfect
kind
sense.
of it was kind of like in the back of your mind, backdrop type of thing that oh yeah, we're now also owned by Sony, but you did your day-to-day job specifically for Bungie and what you're doing within the
Hmm.
scope of QA testing. Now uh, that's understandable. And from we talked earlier, I used to be in corporate, um, and that was a lot of what the last company I worked for, um, what it was like. I think something happened to the freaking feed again, Panda with the cameras. That's kind of
Ah,
why.
what
Yeah,
happened to it?
yeah, they're like tiny.
Oh, they're just tiny? Why are they tiny?
I don't know. Technical difficulties, people.
Yeah, I
Tell on
must
it.
have like must have, the Discord is up. Like you should be able to see all the cameras. I don't know why they just did that. It's so weird. Tiny camera
Um,
squares. Like just imagine going to see my left eyebrow. It's so weird. But okay, I think we should be good now because I moved it to my left monitor. All right, there we
gotcha.
go. Now we're good.
Um, but yeah, and this is just my experience. I'm not attesting to, this is what Bungie was going through, etc. But basically, whenever you've got another company that kind of like buys or merges with your company, you pretty much don't feel that presence until like an X moment. And like I said, I can't attest to what, happened this week over at Bungie, but in my experience, it was we didn't feel it until it was kind of like too late. And as I shared, I was laid off from my job, but basically it was a part of one, they were cutting positions that they felt were redundant. And then two, it was as my boss told me later, was that I literally worked myself out of a position. So
I can kind of see that pattern with how things transpired. Um, I won't be too specific, but it was similar of like I was I was doing things such that uh, if I was gone, no one would notice.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Basically,
that sort of
basically, you had your systems in place. You had your way of doing things that it was, at least from my standpoint, it was so well documented that anybody could literally sit in my chair and be able to follow a checklist and boom, 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 they could do my job. That's how well I had it automated down to, and that's essentially what happened. So I can attest to like your situation as well.
I mean, similar. It's like different words, same meaning, sort of thing, right?
Right.
Right.
But like I was saying before, it was a partnership, as they kept referring to it. Whenever we had meetings, like we had a shooting partnership. So I don't think I was directly affected, just because corporately speaking, I was low on the ladder. I was a tester. I wasn't senior anything. I was
Right.
fresh blood.
Okay. Now, but like in terms of that though, we do want to emphasize that like obviously like you did matter, and when it comes to the,
Yeah.
I definitely would want to shine a spotlight on the article that was released today, the Our Path Forward thing that they put out, and one thing that really like I mentioned before we got on camera was the statement of it being one of the most difficult weeks in the company's history and having to say goodbye to our colleagues. And that kind of felt like a dig, especially because not everyone got to say goodbye. And I don't know how much you could say from your experience that day, but like for what you know, what can you tell us in terms of like that experience, like waking up to all of that?
So Monday was weird for me. I have to we're like the Bungie is always like a remote first workplace, so I had some friends on the East Coast that I had to kind of get up early to help them with things.
Hmm.
They're on East Coast where some people are we're all kind of scattered throughout in our little team. So when they got started working, they send questions to me at like 7 a.m. usually. So in order to get ahead of that on Monday, I just figured, oh, I'll get in there early. I walked into the office, my ID card still worked and everything. I sat down and then I started working. Um, I want to say I got an email later saying if you get a meeting, attend it because it's mandatory. And then one of my coworkers said, it was great working with you all. And then we asked, what does it mean? He said, I can't say. And then soon after, I, a few hours afterwards, I was done answering their questions. I believe they probably went to, East Coast people probably went to lunch. I got a meeting on my calendar 15 minutes before it was supposed to start. And I started panicking. I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but they set up there was like a meeting room that I had to go to that I'd never been to before, and then I got lost, and then I called into the meeting on my phone, and they gave me directions to the meeting so that I would show up kind of on time. And then it was a small meeting. Um, and then within the course of 15 minutes, they told me everything that you kind of know now. Uh, yeah, and then they told me I couldn't go get my stuff because I have some stuff in the office that I needed that I brought with me because it's like my backpack that I have my stuff in, and some stuff that I left because I asked for an office desk because I was coming into the office so much. And then They said, "We'll have you wait in the lobby. Someone is waiting outside this meeting room, and they will help you get your stuff."
Damn.
And it felt surreal. I think the term I had was that comes to mind is I was dissociating. So I didn't know what was didn't feel what was happening until after I let it sink in. I was in shock. I was in shock pretty much.
Yeah.
And then sitting there in the office, I believe sitting in the chair, like I had brought in headphones, a backpack, and uh for some snacks that I grabbed from home because I wanted to snack before lunch. And then I couldn't because I left the bag there at the desk. They wouldn't let me go back to walk for it. And then I had to wait in the lobby and they had to pick up all my stuff. Um, and then they asked, "Did you leave anything else?" The person that picked up my stuff for me was pretty nice. And there's like, is there anything else? Like I asked for specific things that they could bring to me. They kind of did. And then they said, "Okay, this is as much as you can hold because you don't have any other things, and then we'll ship everything else to you in a box," which I uh got yesterday, I believe.
Yeah,
And
I
then
saw that tweet of the picture of the stuff that you
yeah,
got,
if
and
people in chat want to look at it, they can look at it, but I won't link it here. Uh,
Yeah,
like
that
I hold. I want to be very clear. I hold no ill will against anyone who's still working there at Bungie, because
no, no, no.
those are my friends, those are my coworkers. I was the fresh face there, and I just didn't get enough time to know anybody. But before I was locked out of the system, I sent the team that I worked with my personal email and my personal phone number. That was all I could get out before I believe they just locked everything because after like 10 minutes after that meeting and I was waiting in the lobby, they were shutting everything of mine down. So my day started at around 7:30 a.m. My day ended around 7:25 or 10:25.
so when you went in that meeting, you said it was a small meeting. Were there other coworkers, or I'm going to assume it was mostly
No, it was just me and the person telling me that I was being let go. And like an HR person, I believe. I don't know, but I don't know the experience of other people. It was a small meeting meant specifically to tell me I was let go. And I was, I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you say it, to see the person. I was talking to the person face to face.
right?
Yeah, because we definitely did hear that some people were told by email. So that is definitely a double-edged sword of were you lucky or were you not? But that you got told in person. I think for me, when it comes to this, seeing the fallout that sort of occurred online and sort of, I think what most people sort of interpreted as tone death. What like I remember us talking. What for the people watching, what or listening? What was your feelings watching it unfold on social media after you were able to get home and sort of process everything?
Um, it definitely was just kind of surreal to see how many people were let go. Um, people, I started referring to it as because whenever I asked my coworkers or former coworkers, they were like, I would ask them who survived the purge, because that's what it kind of felt like. Like
Holy
it,
shit, that is
we
surreal.
don't know who lived. We don't know who stayed, and I would only know after the fact of asking them. I wouldn't say purge. It was more like the snap, but the same deal. It was like
Right.
it was literally anyone. One friend I knew, one coworker was there for 5 years. One coworker just got moved out 2 months ago. So it was like no one was safe. With little asterisk. I don't know if leadership was. But anyway, that's regardless of the point.
Yeah. Still though, that just like it was very mind blowing to see how like chaotic is the best word I can sort of find it in terms of like no rhyme or reason for the cuts. It wasn't like, oh, like this many people had to be cut for this department or whatever. Like the certain like composers that formed the groundwork of the game, artists that formed the
Not
groundwork of the game. That it,
not
it,
only
It
not
was
only the
yeah.
very
groundwork of
it was very indiscriminate, and I didn't know why. I still don't know kind of why. They gave me a vague reason, kind of like how Cajun said of your position is no longer needed.
and on top of that, it like not only did they, some of these people set up this game, but they've been with some of these individuals, like from what we've been seeing online. Michael Salvatore. I can't remember her name, but one of the
Lorraine.
original artists from back in Halo. Halo.
Yeah, it
This
was
it,
Lorraine something. She did all the
yeah.
comics for Halo. Like I didn't even know these people still worked with Bungie. Like it was a massive operation. Like I only got to know 20 something people, and that was just because of my teams and people who worked there before me introduced me to them, like, oh, here's this person, and I would be excited to shake their hand. And to speak to the Twitch chat, yeah, I was at the office. I had lunch with Joe Blackburn like 2 3 different times.
Mm.
So it was like I was there. I was physical. Uh it was nice to have the office actually. I was able to go in. I got my daily walks in kind of because I was able to get into the office and was like, oh, everyone's here. Or at least like some people were here. And it was nice to like it made me feel more part of the company than ever before because I was like, I'm at the office. I'm here with other people. But that just kind of at this point. That's besides the point at this point.
So, side question I have to ask, and I think this will add a little levity to the situation. You mentioned Joe Blackburn. Do you prefer Joe Blackburn with or without the mustache?
uh What was that Parks and Recreation character? Ron with the mustache?
Yeah, Ron
Yes,
Swanson.
it's like so my vision, right? Joe with the mustache is Ron. Joe without the mustache is Chris Pratt's character. So it's like it's night and day, but I didn't recognize because I took the elevator with him once to go because I was leaving the office because I was going home, and there was like he was without the mustache, and they were just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I was like, I took a double take. I was like, "Joe Blackbird," and I got really excited and shook his hand. But it was like, I think more people are used to him without the mustache now, but yeah, I think believe when I in my internal mental image of him was like, oh, he has a mustache and sort of thing. Because without it, it kind of looks really weird.
It
That is
definitely is
very
a night and
funny.
day.
I will say that
But
they're
but you understand my reference, right? It's like
yeah.
Oh no,
mustache,
it's absolutely
baby
on freaking
face.
point.
Like
Yeah,
it's
it
it's
is.
so stark of a difference. It threw people off, especially like during the Twitter video. He had to tell people, "Hey yo, the Lightfall presentation. Well, you'll see me with a mustache. Sorry to disappoint you. My mustache is gone." Like that kind of threw me off. But when I was well, since you mentioned The Office, I know one thing that's been common around one of the talking points has been the conversation of the improvements that have been made to The Office, the renovations that have been going on. Like in the face of remote work being so common in your the like facility, what was that like when it comes to seeing the renovations being done, but also working with remote people to make the game work the way it does?
Uh, I don't think The Office was kind of a afterthought, actually. It was like a big, nice place to go to if you were able to, and it was an incentive for people to like, hey, if you want to work here more often, you should move here. It was the idea. It was like
Mm.
it was a it was a bonus, right, to people who are able to be able to come in. But it was never of like you need to come into the office. I just felt like going in there because like I feel like it made me feel like I had a real job.
That
Is
makes
how I
sense.
put it to like my mom and my dad because they were like, "But you play with video games, but there's an office," and they were so confused. But anyway, yeah, it
That's
was
so
like
funny.
a in the face of that, I don't want to say because they uh all the things at the office was like kind of secondhand to uh what else was going on with the because regardless of what happened in the game, the office was still being built, I believe. I don't know. I can't say to like how what the production level of the office was, but like
Right.
when I started going into the office, it was done.
Okay.
So when you came on board, the new office, the new quote unquote campus was built.
I don't know if I can say when it was finished. So we'll skip that question.
But in terms of it, it is finished currently. The renovations have been done, to your knowledge.
Probably. I don't know. I haven't gotten a good look in a few days.
That's valid.
Yeah,
Okay. Cage, I know you had like a few different ones. I don't want to. Oh, dang it.
yeah.
Well, why does that keep happening? That's so weird. Like I don't know why the camera just keeps dipping in it. I don't know what's been going on with that. I just need to put all my browsers on like my monitor and stop moving like trying to like to assume Discord's gonna play nice with me. I apologize for that. Um, but in
Sorry,
turn,
I'm
but
answering somebody in one of the chats.
the
Uh,
it's Bungie. They're trying. No, stop that. No.
oh
I
God,
hope
no,
not.
no, no.
No, I don't see that happening. No, like that's not gonna happen. But like in terms of it, I know there is a lot of concern when it comes to the future of the game, and I know that you have the like the best of intentions and the best like you're still a player first. You still care about this game, and I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to see it succeed, but without obviously like saying anything out of pocket, what do you like do you see the future going well from your perspective?
Mm, I can't say on anything past the final shape because I
Okay.
know whatever they have for next season is pretty much uh done at this point. Like we were just working on final shape stuff pretty much for a while. I don't know how. I'm not gonna say, but I know the stuff coming out next season is gonna be good and fun for everybody who still plays, but Final Shape, I don't know. I'm gonna still play it just because I managed to snag a game code for that, so I'm not canceling anything from myself. So
Right.
I'm gonna have like a first-hand experience of it. But as a matter of if you still are hesitant on buying it, I would wait because I don't know what's gonna happen with Final Shape.
Okay. That
If you
interesting.
want a TLDR of what I just said, play next season, wait for Final Shape.
All right.
Gotcha.
Cajun, how
So
you feeling there?
so I've got one question. Um, so once again, you came on shortly after Witch Queen, and from the time that you started to, I'll say, before you got laid off, do you feel that the overall community, the concerns that were brought up, that the feedback from not just as a QA tester, but also as a player yourself, do you feel that community concerns were valid in the feedback that they were bringing?
Well, obviously, yes, just because we were all the devs are also players. Like people find it hard to believe we play the game we produce because we enjoy it. So we can see some of the more valid points of it, but it's also we have a wider point of view sort of thing. It's like not everyone's a hardcore player like I am. Like some people never played like Destiny 2 before they started working here. And then once we started easing them into it, they were like, okay, we can see why, like some points. But we're a the vast player base of like hardcore players who played raids and trials and day ones and stuff and did speed runs and stuff. They were versus like the players who didn't know about like players who just started is like why is there so much stuff to come in to produce it? So definitely the new player experience is not exactly friendly, and we can kind of agree on
Ooh,
that.
I'm glad somebody said it because I've been saying it
Yeah,
for years. Yeah.
I think that's one of I'll say one of many things that both me and Panda can both agree with is that the new player experience definitely needs a lot of work, a lot of attention. But I I think I'm really gonna freaking stoke the fire when I say this, and a lot of players are going to agree. The cost of entry into the
Yeah.
franchise needs to be fixed because the amount that it takes for a new player to jump in and be fully integrated to be able to do all the content is fucking absurd.
Like unless you're on PC and can get a game code from like here and there, it is like over $200 to $300 just to get for entry. And
Yeah,
that's that,
I can't really say to that point just because I've been playing for so long, so it's more of like a monthly expense than anything. But
right.
that was like I could see how I like it was like kind of like a numbing sensation because it was like I've been playing this game for so long and shoveling out for every expansion just because I wanted to see what happened next. And because I enjoyed the game, that, yeah, counting it, it's a big commitment if you want to play the game. But I can't really say on whether or not they'll change any of these prices because I'm not sure uh, why they did certain pricings. Because you have to understand, whenever employees start the game, they have like codes and stuff they can use. So they don't.
Mm,
I mean,
Hmm.
that makes sense.
you work for Bungie, you get codes. It's like even if you worked on, it was like yeah, that's how I had my codes for Final Shape because they came up with those codes in pre-orders before I left. So I used that immediately. I always would run out kind of fast on those because my friends always wanted one, but I only had so many to give away.
That's logical. That makes sense. So when it comes back to what you said, I don't know how much you can say because my the minute you said like wait for final shape, my brain was immediately like why? I don't like or without like descript without too much detail. What has you concerned? What are your major concerns moving forward in terms of the future of the game?
Um, well, just because I was laid off, man, they just
Right.
like we have statistically they have less people to work with, so it doesn't really. It's like if we were if it was different story if we had like people working on it, but it was like now it was like what's gonna happen? We don't know because you said that you took the right people. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was gonna like get to that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was like my exact next question when it comes to like the future of the things. That was the
I
major
don't want to.
thing.
Yeah, I don't want to get into what was said on Twitter, but it was hard to read. Even the stuff that came out today was kind of hard to read. But it was my perspective on it was like it's a bunch of it's like how you can write a whole paragraph and say nothing.
That was pretty much what it felt like. It felt like there was one reply on the Twitter post that just said words. Like that's all that was there was words. There was no sentiment, and there was even like a bingo game going on of the like buzzwords of can we find all the Bungie buzzwords necessary here,
I mean,
and
they always have buzzwords, but I don't know how much of the like. I didn't know there was a bingo card of that. I'll be honest. I don't know if there was a bingo thing of like. I kind of that's a funny idea now that I think about it.
it's like
I
yeah.
I think everybody can come up with like the freaking bingo card for just about anything, freaking, like the people had the people joke around and said, well, I didn't have that on the 2023 bingo card, etc. But in relations to the post, I think a lot of people were looking for those whenever there's been a situation either with Bungie or with Destiny 2, people kind of look at the responses from the dev team or in twids or etc. They look for those buzzwords that say, oh, this is a generic PR response from corporate,
Right.
is kind of what that whole, oh, well, is this on my bingo card? That's where that derives from.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. And but like in terms of it, I know you don't want to touch too much on the Twitter speak and whatnot. But in terms of the like sentiment, like have you had like obviously you can't say like who, what, when, where, and why. But in terms of the have you been able to converse with anybody in terms of other departments and their view on things?
I mean, if you're still at Bungie, it just sucks because you want to take a break, but you can't just because life moves on with or without you. It's just kind of a fact of the matter for whether you're whether you like it or not. It's just there.
Right.
Like they want to do things, they want to get work done, but it's really difficult with this huge mental toll, right? People have called it survivor's guilt, but I think it's more
Yeah.
than that. Because like there's survivor's guilt, then there's also the moral aspect of okay, they just laid off 100 people. What's stopping them from laying off me next? Because it was like you want to do your job well, but also you want to have job security. There's a whole mental dilemma for everyone still working at Bungie. And I want to emphasize that it's going to be hard, whether you're laid off regardless or not. And I want people to, like you said at the beginning of this, have empathy. Like people didn't want this. No one wants layoffs to happen. Layoffs suck,
Right.
but it's just
Yeah.
like, what else can people do?
And
Yeah.
That's like the whole thing of it. Is like we still have to go on.
right.
Very
And
much so.
as someone who about 4 years ago was laid off as well, and being able to talk to not just my coworkers that were still at the company, but those of us that also got laid off, there's a mental component to both sides of the coin. It's not this, one side is, all chipper and happier because they quote unquote survived. Yeah, it's like Jess said in chat, the paranoia of how did I miss the cut? Some
Yeah.
people will literally question, should I have been cut? What makes me better? What makes me more valuable? And the sad truth of it all, and this is what I want to impart to a lot of people, the sad truth of it all is that when it comes to corporations, when it comes to companies, there is no right or wrong. At the end of the day, for so many people, you are a number. You are a number on a spreadsheet. And for some people, for some departments, it's literally RNG was against you. You
Yeah.
you didn't realize you rolled that day, but you rolled a nat one, and that's the shit end of the freaking stick. And
It
I, I
sucks.
don't I don't know if that's how you feel about that, Brainiac.
Yeah, definitely of those like uh you mentioned D20, but it was more like a percentile die, I imagine. But it is like, yeah, that sort of thing was like I just have to sigh and try to move forward.
That's all you really can do with it, yeah. And honestly, I very much I don't want to say look forward, 'cause I feel like the wrong thing to say when it comes to this. It very much I am interested to see what occurs moving forward because it felt like the article today tried to hold up the old image of Bungie. It tried to hold up the pre-Monday Bungie, or at least what we could perceive to be the pre-Monday Bungie.
Right.
And that doesn't really exist anymore. So I think moving forward, it will be very interesting to see what plays out because based off what Brainiac said of just like wait for Lightfall, not Lightfall,
Or
Final
final
Shape
shape.
rather, break hit process, not you brain, but me break hit process. But in terms of like wait for Final Shape, it very much has me concerned more so than I previously was because it feels as if they're not only from Monday but from those words that the Bungie we knew isn't fully there. So I very much wanted this to be an emergency broadcast talking about this because Brainiac's story does matter.
Yep.
And I think the one thing that I think the industry needs to hear from this talk or any other talk that occurs in the next few weeks is the industry needs to change. Like the one thing that I've heard recently, and I don't know how you feel about this, Brainiac, and there's been layoffs around the industry, but
Yeah, I know.
this
I know about
feels different. This feels different than every other company. Like someone said, like Epic Games threw like a bunch of folks out the door, despite them making hand over fist. Like new season of Fortnite drops tomorrow. Like that doesn't make sense. But this feels different, where it was like just scattershot, taking out people without warning. We're just gonna just drop people from new age to old age without cause, rhyme, or reason. So I don't know how you like what your feeling of like people saying, "Oh, the industry is making cuts." That is, like, but like it doesn't make it okay.
It's definitely of like, mm, I kind of see what you're going for. It was like it was an industry thing, but I think like it was kind of the thing of like the image of Bungie was they were a small team of people that are working on a big game, and they were like, I believe they kind of had like an underdog image regardless, but they're corporate as far as I'm concerned now. Like as much as you want to say like Bungie is the people that work there, not the company, but they were acquired by Sony. They are a corporation.
Yeah.
Dang.
It hurt it hurts to say, but it's like
Yeah,
now
it
that you're seeing
stings.
it's a industry trend and corporations follow industry trends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um.
I
Yeah.
think it's just like most recent events, the layoffs have just people finally be able to peel back that facade of like shit's fucked, whatever.
and I think that there's a lot of people out there, people like I'm gonna say Jason Schreier, who is doing a lot of work, kind of bringing this more and more to notice. For
Yeah,
those that
I
don't, for those that don't know of Jason Schreier, he writes for over at Bloomberg, but for a long time, for several years now, he has been breaking news on a lot of like game industry issues such as crunch, overwork, issues within studios based upon poor, management decisions. And it's really shed a light within the gaming industry. And Jason was one of the people that first broke the news about the Bungie layoffs and things from anonymous sources from within Bungie about what was going on. So this is for those that don't know, this has been a major issue, not just the layoffs, but like how developers and not only that, QAs as well have been treated to the point where a lot of a lot of consumers now, a lot of gamers are starting to stand behind develop the dev teams and say, "Hey, y'all need to unionize, protect yourselves." Bottom line, because things like what happened this week should not be happening.
yeah, I definitely should have. I was I'll say it, I was naive. I thought this thing I had with my dream job could have lasted forever, but I should have been more realistic. It wasn't going to last forever. And Monday was just proving that fact with regardless of how senior you were at Bungie, you were fit for the guillotine.
So that kind of leads me to an extra question. And like I said, answer from your experience. Was there ever a point in the 2 years that you were there that you ever felt that there was ever a need for a union within Bungie for the team?
Um,
Or got the sense that, the team itself needed a union?
I'll say it like this. I am completely new to the industry of like making games for money. Like I was always I am kind of still a new face on the block sort of thing. So I wasn't aware of industry level issues until fairly recently, this week of that, rather of fact. So I didn't even the thought of union didn't cross my mind unless you were talking about like the writer strike because that always just popped up in people. It was like in it was popping up in um They're just popping up in news because, like, oh, shows are having writer strikes and whatnot. But it was like, I don't know, man.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that it's just it's a hard thing to sort of like stomach and like deal with, and I'm truly sorry that you've had to deal with this. But I do want to thank you for sitting down with us. Like, it can't be easy having to like process that live with folks, especially on a live broadcast. So I do want to thank you tremendously for being here. And I know like there's been folks in both the Discord and the TikTok, both the Twitch and the TikTok chats that like showing you love and sending love because they do care about you as a dev, as like every dev has been getting tons of love this week. I really hope that the future is bright for you and everyone else because you've helped fix a game that has changed so many lives. Like it may have like you've like just like we were sitting here clouded about the legendary farm and whatnot, but at the same time, it's like you helped repair something that was messed up, and that's still a big piece of a thing that we all love, and that matters. So I definitely want to make sure that you are emphasized here, that you mattered when it came to this project. So for, like so much, thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you, Brainiac. Like I said earlier, I sympathize for what you had to go through because having been laid off myself, this really does freaking it hits the heart. And it's not something you ever want to see someone go through, but I really wish you the best in what you do and thank you for coming forward and sharing your story because I know especially given that this just happened Monday. This could not have been easy for you and like I said, I want to thank you and I wish you the best. And I'm going to extend this to you. If you ever need to talk to someone, my DMs are open to you, brother.
Most definitely, same. So like we are definitely gonna wrap up the show. And, like, but in terms of something, what do you want to leave people with? We always say on the show that we're gonna have like a final word, like a final statement of the show. What do you want to leave the fans of Destiny with moving forward?
Mm, I didn't think of this. Probably should have. I'm gonna say. I want to emphasize that uh, Bungie was Bungie should be not looked at as okay. Don't look at Bungie as the corporation. Look at it as the devs. Care about the devs and what they're doing personally, rather than what's been going on with all the final shape restructuring stuff. It sucks it's gonna happen, but I really want people to remember that they're people at the end of the day. Like people always clown on like, haha, Bungie is a indie game studio, yada yada. They have this whatever, right? And like they just nebulous Bungie has just been tossed around so often, but it's just like it's just tiring to hear of like, oh, we're gonna do it's just another thing that Bungie does, but it's just like Bungie is more than that. It's the people, and I want people to remember that the people are more affected more than the corporation. I guess I don't know. It's really weird.
No, you make a very good point. Is that like that's the hard thing to hear, or like to really like remember sometimes, is that it sucks that some things are out of your guys' control. I think the one thing that stuck out to me from the reporting was that sometimes the the dreams and the ideas of the devs fall on deaf ears to the higher ups. So the devs themselves do matter in the grand scheme of things. You matter, like other testers, other like the community managers. Everybody mattered when it came to this, and apparently other people viewed it otherwise. And I'm sorry that really does suck. So I just am still like will always be thankful that I got to spend this time with you, because I feel like this conversation can open eyes for people to hear, like, hey, real people poured their soul into this game. It's not just a corporation making corporate decisions constantly when it comes to situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's important to me that people remember that these are people, not a faceless thing. You can just faceless things like you could just like crap all over. It's like, ha ha, this is a shit game, but people made the shit game, so don't dismiss that just because you don't like it.
Fair
Right.
enough. But we're going to go ahead and wrap things up, folks. Thank you for being here and hearing from Brainiac. Thank you for being here with us. And we will possibly have a show tomorrow. We're going to talk about it, but I think this, at the very least, was needed because it gave a voice to the people who have been hurt. So we will catch y'all Starside, because we mean that more than what was said today. And we will always we'll see y'all Starside. Peace out.